a show about living in Atlanta and purchasing a home here. Atlanta Community Profiles is hosted by Lou Whelan, who will talk to experts who know this ever-changing city and its real estate industry. We'll talk to mayors, community leaders, and residential real estate experts. Now, here's Lou Whelan with this week's Atlanta Community Profiles.
Hello there and welcome to our show. My name is Lou Whelan. I publish the official relocation guides on Atlanta on behalf of the First Multiple Listing Service of Atlanta. We've published these for 25 years this year, and we have 5 publications, one for North Fulton in partnership with the North Fulton Chamber, one for Gwinnett County in partnership with the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce, one for Cobb County in association with the Cobb Association of Realtors, one for Atlanta, and one for Inside 285. They're available at Chambers of Commerce and Realtor offices at no charge. They're also on my website, AtlantaCommunityProfiles.com, and along with a great deal of other information about Atlanta. And I'm also a realtor with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Georgia Properties. If I can help you with any of your real estate, I'm a commercial agent. I do handle some residential, but my main area of involvement is multifamily housing. And be happy to help you with any of your real estate needs. My website is LouWhelan.com. And so that's the intro. And today we are very fortunate to have a distinguished guest on our show, Kali Kirkham. We don't use your middle name very often around the North Fulton Chamber. Boatright is the new president and chief executive officer of the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, taking the position of Brandon Beach, who has been on the show many times over the last 5 or 6 years. So welcome to the Chamber. You have big shoes to fill with Brandon, who's a phenomenally brilliant guy and a personal friend. And based on what I've seen so far, you're going to do just fine.
Thank you. And happy anniversary, 25 years.
Thank you.
Very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, Kali is not new to the chamber business. She led the Douglas County Chamber from a difficult position, almost bankrupt, when she arrived there in 2004 to a very strong financial position when she left this year. And basically, she is a graduate of the U.S. Chambers Institute of Organization Management and a Georgia Certified Chamber Executive. In addition to her chamber responsibilities, she serves as Vice President of the Technical College Foundation Association of Georgia, Chair of the Georgia Chamber Small Business Federation on the Georgia Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, Executive Board Member of the Regional Business Coalition, and a member of Wellstar Douglas Regional Health Board.
Well, not anymore.
Okay, that's updated. Okay.
Since I did move. Yes.
Okay, so can't go over there.
That's right.
Okay, unless you have a helicopter. She's the past chair of the Georgia Association of the Chamber of Commerce Executives, founding board member of the Brighton Academy Charter School, and past president of the Junior League of Douglas County. Last year, she was honored by her peers in the chamber, in the industry, when she received the Georgia Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives Legacy Award as the association's most prestigious award. It recognized long-term executives who have excelled over a period of years and in leading and innovating in the process of building their respective chambers. The award is based on the demonstration of excellence in areas of chamber leadership, organization management, service to the profession, community reputation / involvement, and personal attributes. So she graduated from the University of Missouri with in the School of Journalism.
I did.
Which is the #1 school of journalism, by the way, in the United States. I happen to know that very well because of my background. And I know that you definitely know your business as a graduate of the journalism school there, out in the middle of nowhere. I know
it
that
is.
feels.
Columbia, it's like right in the middle of St. Louis and Kansas City, so you're equidistant to some place, but you're kind of in the middle of no place, which is great if you're studying.
Right. If you're studying, if you're not studying, it's pretty boring, right? But I listened. I went on the chamber website pretty thoroughly. I think I did at least, and doing some research for the show. And I know you have a very distinguished background in business. And at one point in time, somebody approached you and asked you, offered you a position in the Chamber of Commerce. And I remember what your question was at that time was, what is a chamber? What do they do? And so you're probably not. So today I'm going to ask you, what is a chamber and what do they do now that you know for very well? What have you learned about what a chamber is, and specifically the North Fulton Chamber?
So the great news is that after this many years, I've kind of figured that out now. But certainly when I started at the Douglas County Chamber 14 years ago, I was involved with an international nonprofit. I've always done nonprofits and been very involved in the community and around. But it was interesting because with the occasion to join the Chamber of Commerce, I did have to ask the questions. I was familiar with international chambers and doing some work internationally and abroad, but not locally. So the answer for the North Fulton Chamber is, of course, that every chamber is different. I think we've had that conversation about one of the lovely things about working for a Chamber of Commerce is that they're really very unique beings. But at the end of the day, the job of a chamber is really a convener between governments and public entities, and then the private entities or the business, to be able to bring those groups together really for the greater good of a community, in this case, Greater North Fulton. And as you mentioned, Senator Beach did a wonderful job in the last 14 years doing that. The other thing that we really focus on is growing business. We want a successful community, a successful economically thriving community, and when you have businesses that you're able to help network and to help market, certainly in this market it would be a talent development piece, workforce development, which every company needs. I think you probably know better than anybody, Lou, that we're kind of upside down now from the standpoint of there are actually more jobs and positions available than there are qualified people to fill them. So we're in this race for really the talent. And so that's a big part of what chambers are doing today. I like to say that chambers are not your grandpa's chamber anymore. They're very different. They're very diverse in what they do. Each are a little bit different depending on the community that they're in, but they still are very, very focused on thriving businesses, and that's what we want, and that's what's good for the health of any community.
Mm-hmm. So I guess you figured out what a chamber does, and what actually, I'd like to get to know you, and I get people to know you a little bit.
Sure.
And we'll ask you a question. This question: what motivates you every day? What excites you about the chamber of business and the kind of the world that we live in the chamber world, at least?
It is chamber world. That's great. You know the term, and so in chamber world, I think probably two things. One, I love a challenge. I like change, and I like doing different things, and so in the chamber world, every day is very different. So today I'm here with you and have this opportunity to tape this great radio show. Earlier, I was at the Capitol for a big announcement about transit coming up Georgia 400. Tomorrow, I will be meeting with staff and planning different committees and organizational changes that we have going on. So every day is genuinely different. And so that's kind of exciting for somebody who may get bored fairly easily if they aren't challenged. And so for me, I think that's one of the best things, and that's what motivates me and excites me. I happen to also really like people. And so you certainly have no dearth of people in a chamber of commerce. We're working with businesses who are members, the 1,400 members of our chamber, and I keep challenging them to come in and meet me and certainly to stop me, and I want to get to know them as well. Just like you said, you have to get to know somebody personally to kind of understand what motivates them.
Mm-hmm. Well, while we're on that subject of your meeting at the Capitol, we'll go ahead and spill the beans about the announcement, and we'll be one of the first to break the news. We have only 1 minute, my producer says, but just briefly, could you?
Sure, yeah, and I did check to make sure it wasn't embargoed, so we aren't at least spilling the beans publicly. But the announcement was
we won't
made.
tell anybody. Just between us. And
Just
Christian
between
will know
us.
that pretty
And Christian knows. So darn it, that's now everybody knows.
Yeah, that's right.
But the governor made an announcement today that the full $100 million that was put in the state budget for transit is going up the Georgia 400 corridor. So that North Fulton area that I am blessed enough to represent is going to be getting essentially 4 bus rapid transit stations, in addition to the in addition to the lanes that will help with express lanes. So very excited about that.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful news. So
here's your teaser for coming back.
yeah, so stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. I'm Lou Whelan, sitting here with Kali Boatright, who took Brandon Beach's position at the Chamber as CEO this year. And while we love Brandon and we miss him, we sure as heck do welcome Kali to the CEO position, and we know you're going to do a phenomenal job and carry on and hit the success that like Brandon had with the Chamber. And we're trying to get to know you a little, Kali, and you have a pretty important position, influential position, and one of the biggest chambers in the United States, and certainly one of the most influential chambers. You were at the Douglas Chamber as CEO, and you did a lot of great things and got a lot of recognition. And I was just wondering some things about your leadership style. I went on your site, the chamber site, and did some research, and I remember one quote that you stated on there. It was sort of like drinking from a fire hose and referring to
Absolutely.
Orientation.
Right.
How's that going anyway?
It's a great question to ask me 60 days in. So 60 days into a new job, I would think that probably most people would still be drinking from the proverbial fire hose, but certainly learning about the community is a great amount of information to kind of absorb and to get to know. I'm blessed to work with 6 different cities, and each of them are very unique and have their own unique cultures and draws. And I honestly had been to all of them prior to taking this job because I did a lot of concerts and restaurants and opportunities to get up into those areas. And so it was a nice opportunity to at least get a glimpse into each of those communities. But now as chamber president, as you mentioned, I certainly have to know it all a whole lot better. And so getting to know the communities seems to be the larger part of what I'm still drinking from the fire hose on. Mm-hmm. The chamber, I certainly have a history of being able to run a successful chamber, and that's great, although all chambers are different. But in this particular instance, I think it's really learning a lot about those communities. Mm-hmm. And they're all growing so rapidly and changing. It's really exciting. It is an incredibly exciting time to be at Greater North Fulton.
Well, it is, and I published the official. I'm supposed to know Atlanta better than anybody because of my 25 years of publishing the official magazines about Atlanta, and I'm learning every day. Every day I learn something new. And now we have the Beltline to learn about, and
Right.
which is a whole new world. But let me ask you this question. You obviously have a lot of experience from your previous position at the Chamber in Douglasville. What do you think about the role that volunteers can play in the Chamber's life?
I think it's probably the most important thing that the Chamber has as far as resources. Obviously financially you want to be strong in any organization, whether profit or nonprofit. But I think the resource of people is far and away more important from the perspective of the success of an organization. Certainly the staff that you work with is incredibly important, the paid staff, and that's going to be incredibly important. But in the case of nonprofits, and in this case, the Chamber of Commerce, which is a 501c6, we have volunteers who help us to expand the organization and the reach that we have. There's no way that a team the size of the Greater North Fulton team could reach 6 communities and be able to reach out to those. And so in this instance, those volunteers are incredibly important. And I think that's probably the biggest resource from that perspective. We use volunteers for our ribbon cuttings and our grand openings. We use volunteers for events and for activities. And also volunteers really give a lot of energy to the Chamber. I've met so many of our board members, certainly, and our diplomats, our ambassadors, that it's been fabulous to see why people want to be engaged with the Chamber. And there's the big question, right? You want to know the why. And from a marketing background, certainly finding out why people want to engage helps you understand what you should do more of.
Mm-hmm. Dan Coffin, the president of the Gwinnett Chamber, was on a couple weeks ago, and he's about my age but accomplished unbelievable things in his life, including head of West Point.
Absolutely.
And I asked him, and he's on the boards of many companies, I asked him, what motivates you, Dan? And his answer was, I like to help people.
Mm-hmm.
What's your paradigm on that?
Well, first let me say Dan is tremendous. I certainly feel badly if he was in this chair 2 weeks ago. I'm sure I can't do nearly what the general has accomplished in his career, and I'm in awe of it. And certainly thank him for everything he's done for the country as well. But from my perspective, I think what motivates us is what we're going to leave behind. I think that what I do on a day-to-day basis, we may not see for 20 years. So it's not like painting a room where at the end of the day you see, oh, this is wonderful. I've turned my room into this beautiful blue color or whatever color you've chosen. When you do work in a community, it's years in the making, and you're laying foundational change that you may not ever get to see personally, but hopefully generations from now, they will reap the reward of all the foundation that was laid. And I think that's the biggest part of really the motivation of kind of why do you do what you do.
Mm-hmm. So you have, did you say 60 days or 90 days?
60 days in.
60 days
2 months, yes.
And I guess you're shaping your priorities and goals still at this stage.
I would say that for the most part, the executive board who hired me was very generous in letting me have some time to absorb certainly the information. My priorities upon entering the door were crystal clear for me, and that is my team. I have a team, a staff who's already in place and is doing amazing things already and have been. And so getting to know them and developing that relationship and that trust and respect with each other, I think is going to be incredibly important foundationally going forward. Mm-hmm. So that's my first focus, was definitely the folks who I get to work with every single day. And that's good because you want to come to work every single day and enjoy the people that you work with. Right. And so that's certainly foundation of an organization, making sure that we have all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted, and all of those foundational pieces are going to be very important. But as I mentioned, it's very much in good shape. Brandon left it in good position for me. So then you turn to future, and the board had just completed a strategic plan. So over the next 5 years, really, the direction of the organization has already been painted to some respect, if I can use that same analogy, so I can see where we're going and be able to execute those things.
So I think there are 1,400 members.
There are, yes.
And do you see that figure growing over the next 5 years? And what is? We don't have my producer is still giving me the evil eye again. But what kind of growth do you think is possible in the next, say, 5 years, based on so many unknowns? I know. But
there are a lot of unknowns.
I know you don't have your crystal ball with you right now, but do you have a goal of numbers, or is it quantity, or what? What is it?
I think that I will answer you in a very sort of mysterious fashion by saying 10 years ago, I don't think anyone would have thought that Greater North Fulton would be the size that it is today. And so for me to guess what 5 to 10 years down the road this chamber is going to look like, I think would be really a crystal ball moment. I do know that we will be growing, and there's so much opportunity. There's so many businesses that have moved to our area that really the only place to go is up, and growing is part of that. And so certainly part of the strategic plan is growing our membership, both in quantity and in quality. We want those businesses to reap the rewards of a great community. And so we can do that by collaborating and working with others.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is what was taken off your website. I'm going to just ask you to define the mission of the North Fulton Chamber. Welcome back. I'm Lou Whelan with the privilege of having some time with Kali Boatright, the new CEO, Chief Executive Officer, and President of the North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, one of the largest chambers in the United States, actually, and certainly one of the most influential. And she's got big shoes to fill with Brandon Beach, who everybody knows and loves, and is still over there. Actually, he has still an office over there, so he's not out of mind. He's still he's still around. We see him every day, and
yeah, he's running our CID in North Fulton, so it's very handy to have him literally in the building and right around the corner. So he's a great resource.
Let me ask you on that subject.
Sure.
What is the interaction between the chamber and the CID, and how does that synergistically help people in business?
Well, I think that the importance of the two organizations working in tandem to be able to move the community forward are incredibly important. Obviously, the CID is funded by tax dollars from those in their district in the area that are funded through mills that are assigned to the CID, where the chamber is funded a little differently. We are funded through members and through our events like our gala and our golf tournament. So we, in that respect, are different, but we work together on the same projects, bringing new business, economic development, successful business development in the community is synergistically what we are both doing.
Okay, so I'm glad I just I think a really good question, at least I think, is how would you define the North Fulton Chamber in terms of just from a macro standpoint?
As far as what the organization does?
Yeah, what is basically, if somebody says, like you asked, what is a Chamber of Commerce initially when you were offered a job back in 2004?
Right.
How would you articulate the purpose of the North Fulton Chamber at this stage? And obviously you know it better than anybody, or as well as anybody. How would you articulate our mission and what we do, and if somebody, what's the elevator pitch for the North Fulton Chamber?
Well, I'm still working on that. I'm 60 days in, right? So I'm trying to get like the perfect pitch.
Really.
Right, I have a year. Yes, if you hear me say once I'm new here, then you know how I'm going to work that for the year. But I think it's exactly what I just described: economic and community development at its core, at a macro version of the description. But if you dig in a little deeper, the fact that we work with so many organizations, I mentioned collaboration, so I'm going to sort of defer back to the collaborative arrangement that we have with the county and with the 6 cities, pardon me, that we work with so that we can focus on developing an amazing community. And so as a regional chamber, we work, it's the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, so we've got a very large swath, if you will. And so in the very long time that we've been doing this, we've seen so many changes. I'm certainly, we mentioned you're 25 years in doing your guides. And so you've seen how much really Atlanta has changed, and certainly North Fulton. So we work in tandem with those governments, with our 6 cities and with the county, and the county itself is even larger going into Atlanta, and then South Fulton. And so we're part of a larger system that really we're all driving forward. And as I mentioned earlier with the governor's announcement in transit, that still goes back to economic development. Mm-hmm. Companies want to locate where they have the best talent. We are very blessed in Greater North Fulton to have great schools. We've got great universities continuing to expand. The most recent, Gwinnett Tech, obviously expanding their footprint there. And so if you look at the education background, we're certainly from a standpoint of the housing market, one of the highest housing markets in the community and one of the best educated workforces. So if you look at that, you really can't be too surprised when companies like Mercedes-Benz and State Farm come into our community. But more important for those businesses is that those CEOs used to make decisions about where they wanted to locate companies by where they wanted to live personally, where they wanted to be. They don't do that anymore. They realize that the most important aspect of their business is finding great people to come work for them. And again, back to that talent and workforce solution. And so the chamber has really changed to focus on that because we want folks to locate. We want companies to locate in our area because of the resources available. So talent, education, transit, all of those lead into the bigger scheme of economic development.
Mm-hmm. Well, there we go again. My producer is at it again. We got to go. But when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about the chamber and help people to understand the different committees over there. Sure. And we're going to ask you the $1 million question, which is what is your pitch to invite people to join the chamber?
Oh.
How would you explain the benefits to somebody who said, like you said, what is a chamber from ground zero? So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Lou Wheeler. We're sitting here with Kali Boatright, the new CEO of the North Fulton Chamber, 60 days into her new position there. And first of all, I would like to say thank you for your service, because I know you put in a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours. You had to move from one part of town to another, and I know that without the desire to help people and contribute to the well-being of the community, it would not be in the scheme of things for you. So thank you, first of all, for your service to the community. And we know you're going to do a fantastic job. We look forward to seeing lots of great things from you. But on that subject of that, let's talk a little bit about the committees at the Chamber. Actually, maybe backtrack. Let me ask you this. You asked a while back, when you first started from business to the Chamber world, what does a Chamber do? And how would you explain to an individual why they should join the Chamber?
That's a great question. And here's the truth about that is that for every business, it looks a little different. You've got sizes of companies ranging from very large Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies down to a brand new entrepreneur who's very new in business. And there are compelling reasons for all of the companies of those sizes and everything in between, but they're all very unique to those companies, which is why chambers have a lot of things going on. You alluded to the fact that there are a lot of hours spent in chamber world, early morning and late evening. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, you know, you're making a difference in your community. And I think that's what motivates us and keeps us going, as we've discussed before. But the truth of the matter is that if I were talking to an individual who has a business, I would certainly ask more about the type of business. And after doing this as many years as I've done it, really focusing on the fact that those small business owners, the marketing and the networking is so incredibly important to them. It takes 7 exposures for someone to remember your name. And when you're providing a service, you want to be able to be recognizable. And the only way to do that is to do things like our networking events, or like our Pro Alliance group, which is a leads generation group at its heart. That's actually, if I had to pick a favorite, we're not supposed to have favorites, right? I've got 2 kids. I have no favorites. Mm-hmm. But in the Chamber, there is an organization called Pro Alliance, this leads generation group, that is definitely my favorite. It's wonderful. The energy that comes out of that group is inspiring. And because my office sits right where the group meets, I get to be engaged in it and get to be inspired by it. And so that's a huge piece of it. So certainly for smaller organizations, I would push in that direction. For a larger company, it's really that influence and being part of the direction of the community that for the most part is of interest to them. And it looks a lot different. They may not be as interested in attending the networking events and the leads generation, but certainly they're very interested in being able to interact at the highest level with our chairman's circle and with elected officials, to be able to have some weigh-in on what the community needs. And if there's one thing that I've realized, that people who go into business in a community don't just do it by happenstance. There's a reason. And for many of those, it's because that community is theirs, and they feel very, very strongly that they're part of the solution moving forward. And so that's really, I would ask the question, tell me about your business, learn more about it. And then, as you mentioned, we have so many different opportunities in the Chamber. There really is something for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Good segue to the next question. The committees, you have Kendra Plotkin, who's the chairman of the ambassadors. You have Debbie Riles, who's a golf tournament
does
chairman.
All of our events.
The awards chairman is also Kendra. You have membership or leadership North Fulton. I'd like to talk about that. The Alumni Association, Public Policy, Talent Coalition, Tech 400, Women in Business, and Young Business Professionals, and on and on. So we only have 30 seconds now.
Good luck.
So how would you describe that in 30 seconds? Or, no, I'm just kidding, but how would you talk about committee life at the Chamber?
I would tell you that every single member of my team is highly engaged in working with our committees, because back to your question about volunteers, those committees, we can't run ourselves. It's a committee of volunteers. And so certainly we're just making sure that we're organizing the group and moving them to fulfill the business plan for the chamber, which is created by our board of directors. I think that depending on what your interests are, you mentioned Leadership North Fulton. I've actually applied to go through our Leadership North Fulton class. I am a graduate of Leadership Douglas and went through Regional Leadership Institute, so I'm certainly no stranger to leadership programs. But guess what? I'm in a new community. I'd better get into that leadership program and learn more about our community and what makes it tick. And so I'm very excited about going through and learning more about all of our cities and certainly about Greater North Fulton because I plan to be there for a long time. But there's an engagement from our volunteers, from our members. Many of them are open committees, so any of our members would be able to get involved if they're interested in the Talent Coalition, if they're interested in our Women in Business group. Obviously, the name tells you what it is.
Not too many men in that.
No, there are some. I was pleasantly surprised, actually, to see that there were men who were very interested in advancing women in the workplace. So I think that's a great thing.
Okay, so men could join it too for the purpose of advancing women.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's lots of different ways to get involved, depending on really what your interests are. Public policy and government affairs, leadership, as we've mentioned, our young professionals group, back to the millennials. If with as many folks of our age who are getting close to retirement, let's say, the baby boomers, as they're exiting the market, those millennials had better be prepared to take those positions. So we want to make sure that they're doing that.
Well, thank you for putting me into that category of our age, because you're not my age, I can assure you that. But we'll be right back, and it's not younger, believe me. Welcome back. I'm Lou Whelan, sitting here with the new, 60 Days New, Chairman and CEO of the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, Kali Boatright. And getting to know her a little bit has been very interesting. And we appreciate your coming on the show. And most importantly, we appreciate your commitment to the well-being of our community and making sacrifices to improve our community. And basically, you're setting a good role model for our citizens, and we appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And we look forward to great things from you.
No pressure.
Going forward. Well, I'm sure the pressures always come from within. And, the key topic, one of the key topics today is this topic of live, work, and play. And, I can't think of any place that is more evident as a as a criteria in the decision making of where to put your business and live than in North Fulton, where we have an abundance of all three,
right,
and in extremely high quality. I think the average income or median income in our North Fulton is like $93,000. So
yeah,
pretty high income,
very high for the region.
Well
absolutely.
educated. I think only about a third of the people have less than a college degree. So,
correct.
Anyway, and you came from Kansas City. Right?
I did, yes.
And,
I'm a good Midwestern girl. Grew up in the
nice
Midwest
Midwestern
and moved to
girl.
the Southeast.
Midwestern values.
Yes, and there's no snow down here, or there's very little snow down here. So, needless to say, I stayed.
Yes, that's the funny thing about people. When I came from corporate America for Wall Street Journal for 22 years and moved from New York, and the funny that when there's a word, I forgot the word, it's been so long ago, that when they transfer people to Atlanta, they never come back.
That's right.
There's a word for that. I forgot. Corporate America.
Smart, I believe is the word.
The end of the line or something like that. They're not going to be transferable anymore.
That's right. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and certainly Greater North Fulton is kind of the capstone of the area, which is one of the really intriguing things that led me to take that, because I love Douglasville. I was there for 14 years. I raised both of my children there, and was a significant part of that community. So it really was a very hard decision to leave, number one, and then where do you go once you leave? And so the Greater North Fulton opportunity, going back to your live, work, play, I really feel like that was a big piece of it, right? So work, the chamber has so much opportunity and so many great things going for it that was sort of a no-brainer. The live, I didn't know the area very well. Certainly I'd played there. As I mentioned, I'd been to concerts at Verizon. I had gone to art galleries and eaten on Canton Street in Roswell. I had the occasion to go shopping with my daughter at Avalon. And so, I mean, we'd seen and done so many things in those areas, but the living piece, right? And so that's been in the last 60 days. We're trying to really decide where our forever home is. I made the comment in an interview a couple of weeks ago that, I don't intend to flip either my job or my home. So it's very important that I find sort of our future home. And my husband and I are going to be empty nesters, which is very exciting. So, it's a new opportunity. And the cool thing right now is that the empty nesters are looking for the same thing that millennials are looking for, that sort of walkable, livable city and that urban environment. And there's so many of them up in North Fulton.
Well, my producer reminds me that Christian is at it again, or about at the end. So thank you for coming on the show, Kali. Great to get to know you better, and I wish you all the best. I know you'll be a spectacular success at the Chamber, and we look forward to great things coming.
Thank you, Lou. I appreciate it.
From your desk.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a great day.